Okay, so today we're going to look at determining volume and surface area of some objects. So remember that volume is a three-dimensional space that occupied by an object, and generally volume is the area of the base times the height. So the area of the base is the shape of the base. So whether that's a rectangle, a square, a circle, a triangle, and then we multiply that by the height. So for example, if we have a simple rectangular prism and we want to find the volume, so the volume would be the area of the base times the height. And the area of this base is a rectangle. So length times width and then times the height. And then we just substitute in the dimensions. So here's my base, right? So it's a rectangular base, so 10 times 3 times the height of the object is 4. And calculate that, works out to be 120. Don't forget the units. We have 3 dimensions, so it is inches cubed to the power 3. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I just used this as the base. Any side could be the base. So I could say, if I tipped it over on its side, then this could be the base. Right, so we would take 3 times 4, and then this would be the height. We're still going to get the same result. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which side we pick as the base. It will end up with the same result. Okay, I'm just going to fix the screen. Okay, surface area is a little bit different in that it's the sum of the area of all the faces. So just think about whether you wanted to cover it, right? So let's say we had this box and we wanted to wrap it. Then how much paper are we going to use to wrap this box? And so surface area is the sum of all the sides. So sometimes we call this a net. So if you opened it up, you would see all the shapes that you have created. So we have, if we kind of take this apart, we have this side here that is a 10 by 3, and we have 2 of them, right? So we have one up here. So the area of that side is 10 by 3, and we have 2 of them, okay? Then we have this side here is 3 by 4, and we have 2 of those, right? We have one over here. And then we have this side here is 10 by 4, and we have 2 of those. Okay, so we have 3 different sides and 2 of each. So we have 2 times 30 and 2 times 12 and 2 times 40. So the surface area works out to be 60 plus 24 plus 80, which is 164. And this is inches squared because each side is 2-dimensional. So we have inches squared. Okay, so think about the shapes or the faces that create this object. Think about covering it in some sort of material. Okay, so this question asks for the surface area and the volume. So let's do volume first. So volume, as I said, is area of the base times the height. So this base is a circle. Okay, so the area of a circle as the base times the height. So the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. I'm going to multiply that by the height of the cylinder. So the radius of the cylinder is 7 because it says the whole thing's 14. So the radius is 7, and then the height is given as 10. then we would just calculate that with our calculator, and we would get a volume of 1538.6, and it is units centimeters, which would be power 3 cubed. Okay, surface area. So let's think about if we took this apart, we would obviously have a circle on the top and a circle on the bottom. If you opened up the cylinder, the side would create a rectangle. Okay, so you can always look at, if you had a piece of paper and you sort of rolled it up like a cylinder, if you opened it up, you would see that the sides of the cylinder create a rectangle. So each circle is pi r squared. Now, the dimensions of the rectangle, well, we've got the height, so we know that's the height. The length of the cylinder, or the width, is also the circumference of the circle. So if I opened up that circle, that width or length is the circumference of the circle. So that's why the formula is 2 pi r h. So you have two circles and then 2 pi r h as that rectangle. So we'll just put in the dimensions. So the radius is 7 and the height is 10. And then if we just calculate that, the surface area has a total of 747.32 centimeters squared. Okay, so that's how you come up with the surface area of a cylinder. Now you do have a formula sheet that you can look at, but this is just kind of explaining where that formula comes from. Okay, this one wants to find the surface area and volume of the following shape. So let's break down the volume into its shapes. I have a rectangle in, well, let's say a cylinder, not a rectangle. So we have a cylinder in the middle, and then the top and the bottom create a sphere, right, in total. So you have half a sphere on the top, half a sphere on the bottom, and so together they make one whole sphere. So if you look at the formula for a cylinder, it's pi r squared times the height. And if you look at the formula for volume of a sphere, it's 4 pi r cubed divided by 3. So we'll just plug in those numbers. Volume tends to be fairly straightforward. So it has a radius of 6 and a height of 11. So if we type that into the calculator, we get these values. Oops, got that backwards. So total volume is 2147.76, and the dimensions are in meters and cubed. Okay, so you've got the volume of a cylinder plus the volume of a sphere. If we're doing surface area, so remember we are covering the outside. So if I covered the outside of the sphere, well, that's fine, right? We've got the half a sphere on the top, half a sphere on the bottom. Together we're covering a sphere. But the cylinder, we are not covering the two circles because they're inside. So we wouldn't have to worry about the circles on the cylinder because they are inside the object, right? And the circles are covered by a sphere. So we're not going to include the cylinder, the circles. So the formula for the surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared. And then normally the cylinder is 2 pi r squared, which would be the circles, right? So these circles are 2 pi r squared. We're not going to include that, so we're just going to include the 2 pi r h. And then we'll put in our values. And then we'll type this into the calculator to get our totals and then add it up. Okay, so the total surface area is 866.64. So remember that surface area is covering the outside. It is not covering anything that's on the inside. Okay, so let's just do this one last question. So find the surface area and volume. So volume, let's do that first. So volume, I have a rectangular prism on the bottom of this, looks like a garage or something. And then the top is a triangular prism. So the rectangular prism is just length times width times height. The triangular prism, remember that it's the area of the shape. So a triangle is base times height divided by 2, and then it's times the length. So it's the area of the base times the height. And the base is a triangle, so base times height divided by 2 times, let's say, the length. Right, the length of this is the same as the height. So the dimensions of the rectangular prism are 8 by 14. That looks like a 9. And then the triangle, well, the base of the triangle is 14, and the perpendicular height is 5. So there's my triangle. And then the length of the building is 9. So we get 1,008 for the rectangular prism, and then we get 315 for the triangular prism. Add that up, and it's 1323. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So let's look at surface area. So remember, only covering the outside, right? So we've got a side that is 14 by 8, and we would have 2 of those. We've got a side that is 9 by 8, right? This is 8, and we've got 2 of those. And I'm going to include the bottom, right? Just because it's an object, it doesn't say don't include the bottom, so let's just include the bottom, right? We have a bottom here. So I'm going to include that, but I only have one of them. I wouldn't, this one's inside the shape, so we're not going to include that. So we're only going to include one side that is 14 by 9. It would say in the question specifically if it didn't want you to include the bottom. So we've got 2 sides that are 14 by 8, 2 sides that are 9 by 8, and one, the bottom, is 14 by 9. Okay, now let's look at the roof. So we have a triangle on each end. So the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, right? Plus, so the base of the triangle is 14 times the height of the triangle is 5 and divided by 2, and we have 2 of these. So we've got 2 of these, right? So these are the triangles. And then we have this side of the roof, and we have 2 of them, right? One on each side. So we have 2 triangles on the ends and 2 triangles on the side. Now, the problem with that is we know this is 9, but we don't know this because this is part of this triangle. So we know the base of the triangle is 14 and we know the height is 5, but we don't know the slant. So we have to figure out the slanted side. So if this is 14, well, let's cut it in half to 7, and this is 5 to make a right angle triangle. So we have a right angled triangle that is 7 and 5, so we could figure out the slant height using Pythagorean theorem. So each side is 5 and 7. So that slant height will work out to be 8.6. Let's choose S for slant. So we'll say the slant is 8.6. Okay, so you're going to have to do that as a separate calculation. So you've got two sides that are 8.6 times 9, right? So we just figured out this is 8.6 and the length is 9. And you've got two sides that are that. Okay, so we're going to total it all up. So we have two sides that are 8 by 14, so that's 224. We have two sides that are 9 by 8, so that's 144. We have one side that's 14 by 9, okay? And then we have the two triangles, and that works out to be 70. This to be a plus. And then we have the two rectangles, so 9 times 8.6 times 2 is 154.8. And so total surface area, if I add that all up, is 718.8 inches squared. Right, so try to be kind of organized in what you're doing, right? You'll notice that I wrote it out in words first. Then I put in the formulas that I was going to use, and then I put in the numbers. So that's a good way to organize your work. And then the surface area, we took each side and wrote out its dimensions and then calculated it all up. Okay, so that is volume and surface area. And that is the end of the guide. So we will do maybe a bit of review on another day.